It's November the 2nd, 2013. Don, I'd like to welcome you to the Oral History Project of the Denver Police Museum. Would you please state your name?
Donald L. Simmons, S-I-M-M-O-N-S.
How about your badge number?
My badge number when I came on the job was 954, and then they changed it to 5315.
And your serial number?
Well, it would be either one, I guess.
Okay. What was the name of your parents?
My dad's name was Albert, and my mother's name was Emma.
Where were you born?
In Denver, Colorado.
What type of work did you do before joining the department?
I was a tool and die maker for Gardner Denver Company.
Okay. When did you get married? Or first, are you married?
Yep, I'm married.
And when did you get married?
Pardon?
When did you get married?
June 14th, 1953.
And where was that at?
In Denver.
In Denver. Do you have any children?
I have three. One's passed away.
Okay. When did you join the Denver Police Department?
July 1st. No, July 1st, 1953.
What prompted you to choose a career of law enforcement?
My whole family's policemen. My brother, my brother-in-law, and I even have a nephew on now.
Would you mind naming them?
Oh yeah, my brother was Al Lefty Simmons, and my brother-in-law was George Eberly, and then what is Gordy Baker is my nephew.
Okay. What was your starting salary?
I was making, well, I signed on at $285, but before I got sworn in, they moved it, and I made $300 a month. And with that $300 a month, I got 4 days off a month, and the 5th day I had 5 days off.
Where was the Denver Police Academy located at that time?
It was the old bathhouse at 20th and Curtis, I think it was.
Okay. While you were in the academy, you'd go out on ride-alongs on the weekends. Do you remember what one of the first ones was?
I was always working downtown, car 11 or car 12.
You remember who your partner was?
Jack Hannigan, Lale, I can't remember his first name. There was a couple more.
Okay. After you left the academy and went out, where were you assigned?
When I left the academy, I was assigned to downtown District 1 for 6 months. And then I moved to District 4 in North Denver.
Did you ever walk a beat?
Yeah, I walked a beat right after I got off, after I got out of the academy.
How was communication handled between you and headquarters?
That's all we had was car radios.
Just car radios? Did you ever use the call boxes?
Yeah, we had the call boxes. I remember that on, I used to make the pulls on Larmer Street. I think it was 17th and Larmer, 18th and Larmer, they had a call box.
What assignments did you like the best?
Out of all, since I was on the police department, I think patrol was my favorite.
And that was at District 4 out of North Denver?
District 4 in North Denver.
Did you take part in any of the riots that occurred on the department?
Oh yeah, we was at the Washington riot, we were at West High School riot. Oh geez, I don't know, it seemed like we was in riots all the time.
Did you meet any famous people while you were on the department?
When I was in the Intelligence Bureau, we worked security on Reagan, Mondale, the other Kennedy, that was a senator.
Bobby?
Teddy.
Yeah, and then the, sir, I can't remember, what's his?
Russian.
He was the Russian guy. He was the head of security for the United States government. And I can't remember his name.
Were you ever involved in any of the cases where the policeman was killed?
No.
Do you remember any real strange calls that you may have responded to?
Well, I really didn't start off too good with the police department because they sent me to North Denver, and I was on the job around North Denver about 3 months, and I was working car 46, way up north, and I got a call to Silver Tire at Colfax and Federal. Down Federal Boulevard I came, boy, I had it wide open. I come past 26th and Federal just when the captain was getting out of his car, going into the district. So I went on down to the fire and I come in service and they says, well, report to the captain. So I went in and he says, officer, where were you going so fast? I says, well, I was going to Silver Tire. I had a fire call. And he says, what were you going to do, piss on it? And I said, no, sir. I said, I was just going to guard the hoses. He says, if I ever catch you doing that again, you're going to be walking a beat on under the Colfax Viaduct. But that was one of the things. But I think the one that really shook me up is when I got in the shooting up at 50th and Quitman. They were burglarizing Browning's Market there. And I was working with Al Fitzgibbons. And I told Al, you take the side, I'll take the back. And I went around back and I heard him run up the street, or up the alley. And so I, like a dummy, a rookie policeman, I run up the alley. And boy, that car come down the street, down that alley at me that was standing up high. And I fired 2 shots at the front of the car. And then he tried to hit me, so I jumped over a fence and I fired 3 more. Well, I shot off 2 of the front tires, and I got the passenger in the shoulder. But the worst part of it was there was a woman and a baby in the back seat, and I splattered the glass all over her. And I pretty much quit the job then. And so I guess I told my dad, he was working the elevator, and I told him, I says, I think I'm going to quit. I didn't come on here to kill any kids or women. And next thing I know, I'm getting a call into the chief's office. And he told me something that was very important. He says, you know, you did the right thing. He says, you're a professional. He says, when a doctor, you go to a doctor, they do an examination, they do x-rays, everything, blood tests, before they operate. He says, a lawyer, before he goes to court, he does all the work, all the background check, investigations and all. And he says, as a policeman, and as a professional, you only have 1 second to make up your mind sometimes. And he says, you did good. Now go back to work.
Is there any other calls that you
Yeah, I was working car 42 on Colfax, and it was about 2 in the morning. And when you worked with an older officer, he usually drove first, and then you drove first. He drove first, and then you'd change when you ate lunch. So I'm working with him, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I had to relieve myself. So I pulled into a site station. The site station is just a little cubicle, but they give site stamps, and they had all this stuff that they give, all the gifts after you get so many things. And I couldn't see in. So I parked around the side, my partner's sitting in the car, and I walked in, I walked right into the middle of a stick-up. this guy's got a gun on me and the other one had a tire iron. And I don't know whatever made me say it. I says, my partner's gonna blow your head off if you don't put that gun down. And he turned around, of course he can't see out. I couldn't see in, he couldn't see out. So he put the gun on the counter and the guy dropped the tire iron. There's two Spanish kids. And I put the cuffs on him and come out. And there was my partner. He was resting his eyes. And he was resting his eyes. And boy, these guys were cussing me and raising Cain. So he got a commendation for catching those stick-ups.
Did you get one?
Oh yeah, we both got commendation. But anyway, the gun that they had used had killed the druggist C. Shovel Moore about, probably 8-10 years before that. And these kids would have been about 8 years old or 9 years old, so that shows you how the guns progress through the system.
When did you retire from the department?
Exactly 30 years. It was 83, August of 83.
And you put on 30 years?
30 years.
What was your, during those 30 years, where all did you work? District 4 and
I worked
downtown?
District 4. I was a detective in burglary. I was a street sergeant after that. Then I went to auto theft. I worked auto theft with Les Strader, like you mentioned. And then I went to vice and narcotics. Then I went to internal affairs. And then I went to the Intelligence Bureau, and I retired out of the Intelligence Bureau.
And which one of those was your favorite?
They were all pretty good, but the Vice Bureau, I didn't care for that too much. I pretty much got a divorce while I was working in there. But
you had a picture a while ago of the decoy squad.
Oh yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about what you did in that?
That was the time just about before the police burglary was going down, and Chief Slavin came in. And he picked up 19 guys that was picked from the commanding officers in the detective bureau. Picked 19 guys for Slavin because he didn't know anybody. And but they were rolling the drugs down on Larmer Street, Market Street, all along there. So we would go in and lay down in the gutters and wait till somebody hit us. And I got hit a few times. One time was at 17th and Market. I was laying in the doorway and I had my billfold sticking in my back pocket because I thought, well, they'll grab for the billfold. And they stopped and took a look, and it was a man and a woman. And they walked away. Then they came back, took my watch right off of my arm. And I had a little gun in my hand, a little .25. I holded a police officer and took my watch and threw it in the middle of the street, and it went all over the place. And then another time I was walking 23rd and Welton, around there, 24th and Welton. And I'm staggering down the street. Boy, this car pulled up beside me, and man, this guy jumped out and smacked me, knocked me into a vacant lot. And I pulled my gun out. I said, hold it, police officer. And he started urinating. And so we got him. But I think the worst one was in Curtis Park. We had guys following us, you know, our cover people were there. And I got into Curtis Park. He followed me down Curtis, and then we walked into the park, and that was a mistake. But next thing I know, everything went black, boy. And he had taken a jacket and wrapped it around my head. And I couldn't see a thing, but I knew he was coming at me. So I kept backing up and backing up. Boy, the cover got there. course, they weren't so nice to him. And so I don't know why they were so mad at this guy. The whole front of my top coat was slashed. He was trying to get me. And his name was Santa Steve, and he just got out of the penitentiary. But that was an interesting case.
Did you patrol around the hospitals?
Not very much.
What else did you do on that decoy squad? Was it mainly downtown and then the parks? Or?
Yeah, and over on East Colfax. There was a funny thing happened to me on that decoy squad. Chris Herrera was our sergeant, and he called me. He said, "Could you come in 3 or 4 hours early?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll come in." We were in the old police garage there on Larmer Street. I think it was 8th and Larmer or something. So I come in. There was a guy named Jack Mummy. He was a radio announcer, and he was a makeup man. So they dressed me up in a woman's dress and all, socks and all. And anyway, Dwayne Tate, one of the guys in the decoy squad, we go down to High's Hamburger Joint. I think it was about 13th and Broadway at that time. And I sit down, there's a counter here, and he orders coffee and gets up and leaves. And there I'm sitting. Pretty soon here comes all the guys from the decoy squad in, and I'm sitting there. They didn't even recognize me. Eddie Sonoff was my partner, and somebody said, "What's that old broad smiling at you for?" And Eddie's looking around, he says, "Oh, that gal's got old gripey socks." And so, you know, even my own decoy squad guys wouldn't recognize me the way this guy had me fixed up. But, so they left laughing. But we had a good time.
Nurses' flats.
Nurses, oh, well, I told you about the nurses' flats before. I tried wearing high heels with my dress. And of course I'd have been 6'2", and my wife says, "You look like a football player coming down the street." She says, "You know he's going to attack you. You'd be an insult to the women of Denver if anybody ever attacked you." So I thought, I went. Chris Herrera gave Lou Bowles was one of the guys in decoy. Give the money. He says, "You and Don go down and get him some nurses' flats or something." So we went down, and I can't remember the name of this. It was on Larmer Street. I'm in there trying on shoes, and Lou, he's wandering away. He didn't want any part of me in the women's section. So I got the shoes, and I took them up. And Lou had the money. He had to pay for them. And so anyway, he paid for them, and I said, "These will do just fine, honey." Oh, geez, he turned red, and we walked out the door. But no, we had a lot of fun on that decoy squad.
Were you in the dress at that time?
No.
Do you have any relatives besides the left? Well, we went through this once.
Yeah.
Would you recommend law enforcement to anybody else?
I'd hardly recommend it. I don't know how good it is right now. I've been retired for 30 years, but it was a good job while I was on it.
Do you have any suggestions for anybody that's thinking about joining the department?
I wouldn't
or going into law enforcement?
I wouldn't know you. They'd have to be just straight, I suppose. When I came on, you couldn't even have a traffic ticket. They wouldn't accept you. You couldn't have any debts or anything else. I don't know how they're working it now. So.
Did you have any trouble getting on the department? Were you tall enough and weigh enough and all?
I had trouble with weight. You wouldn't know it now, but I had a hard time making 150 pounds. I just come home from Korea. I spent 18 months in Korea before I went on the police department. And so I was just going with my wife at that time, and we were eating banana splits and everything else, trying to get up to 150 pounds, and I made it.
What do you think about having a law enforcement museum in Denver?
I think it's the greatest thing in the world. Boy, that will, well, people like me that's been retired for 30 years, you know, it's something to really look back onto, the younger people.
Why don't we take a pause and we'll bring...
Don, you've now been joined by a lovely lady. Would you mind introducing her, please?
This is my wife, Joyce. 60 years we've been married.
Yeah.
And how did you meet?
On a blind date. And we were married 4 months later.
4 months. Where did you get married?
In Denver at Central Christian on Broadway.
We saw a picture a little bit ago of your dad. Would you expand a little bit on who he was?
Yeah, my dad was Al Simmons, and he'd been with the city, probably 60 years, maybe longer than that. He worked the old elevator at 14th and Larmer in the old building, and when we moved over to Champa Street, he ran the elevator there. And then when they figured that elevator was an automatic and it didn't need an elevator operator, they put him on the information desk on the front, and he retired. I don't know how old Pop was.
I don't know, but Pop was...
They made him retire because he was over the age, is what happened to him.
He was probably the neatest guy in the world, and everybody loved Pop. And I remember Don telling me that on the elevator, somebody had done, I don't remember, it was a commanding officer, that he ended up, when he opened the elevator door, Pop had a big bucket of water. What is that?
No, he had a squirt gun, and he'd open that up in the captain's office, and he'd squirt that captain with that gun, with water. Next time he come up, boy, the captain had a bucket of water. He threw it at him, right? That was at 13th and Champ.
He was a neat guy. When he and Mom Simmons celebrated 50 years of marriage, we had the reception at our house. We had a nice little house in Southwest Denver, and I think every judge in Denver came to that.
Yeah, the whole bench.
Yeah, they all just loved Pop, you know, but yeah.
When you guys got married, where did you live?
Lived in Southwest Denver.
Pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly, because she got pregnant quickly.
We were in a cellar apartment first, and he had saved his money while he was in Korea and sent it home. And when he came home, he bought a brand new 1953 Chevy Bel Air. And that's what he dated me in.
She thought I was rich.
I thought, boy, this guy's got a neat cook. And now we're in this cellar apartment. I think the bedroom was the old coal bin in North Denver. And I'm expecting this child, and we went out Southwest Denver and visited Joe and George Torsney. And the house next door was for sale. And Don said, I really don't want to bring that baby home to that cellar. And he went out, bless his heart, and sold his car.
See how nice I was?
And he bought the ugliest car.
It was a Studebaker. I thought it was beautiful, but she didn't like it.
But we had a down payment on the house, yeah. And so then we lived in Southwest Denver for 14 years and moved in '69. We moved out to Parker. We lived in
Where
Parker.
were you born at?
Where was I born?
Yes.
Ohio. But we moved to Colorado when I was 15, so.
Where did y'all go to school?
I went to North High School, and she went to school at Evergreen.
Oh.
Right. And in Evergreen, after Evergreen, I went to college in California, in Santa Barbara, California, at a small Westmont college, which is well known now, but at that time it wasn't. And then I came home and met this guy. That was the end of college.
She got lucky.
How did you happen to meet?
Yeah.
It was on a blind date. A friend of mine was in Korea. He was in the Marines, and I came home and I didn't know anybody. You know, I was gone for 2 years. And he says, "Boy, I know a real doll." And I thought, yeah, I know the kind of dolls I'm going to get on a blind date, you know. And so she was living over on Clayton, 6th and Clayton with her folks. I hit the wrong door to start off with, and the butler answered the door. "No," he says, "they live over there." Okay. So we went over, I thought, boy, I really hit the jackpot here. Got a butler and all, you know.
Too bad.
So went over there, and boy, she come up from her apartment in the basement. Never forget that. She had a black sweater, black skirt, and black. Oh boy, was she beautiful!
Oh,
And I thought, oh man. So, and then I didn't know her name. I knew her name was Joyce. The next day I wanted to call her, and I thought, man, I don't even have that girl's last name. So I called my buddy, and he told me what her last name was, Dallas. And I went to a grocery store at 13th and 14th up there on the east side, and I put a nickel in the phone. It wouldn't work, so I told the grocer in there, I says, "Your phone's out of order." I said, "I put a nickel in it." He says, "Sonny, it's a dime. It went up since I was gone, you know." So I called her, and we kind of clicked.
we clicked.
That was it.
So tell us about your kids you had.
Go ahead.
Our oldest boy, Larry, 59 years old, and he passed away last month, or in September. This is already November, isn't it? In the middle of September. And he was a great guy. Our daughter was the middle one, and she married a rancher farmer. They live out in Burlington, Colorado, on a big ranch, and she's an RN. And she travels quite a bit. She has her master's and does an awful lot of work. She even works some of this terrorist stuff. I don't know what she does, medical and stuff. But she goes
If she
off
tells us she's going to have to kill us, she
Yeah,
says.
I know. And our youngest boy, Steve, is 54, and he lives near Bozeman, Montana, and he's a contractor. And they were all here in June when we celebrated our 60th, and we had all of our kids and their grandkids, our great-grandkids. So there was a bunch of us. We have 8 great-grandchildren. So that blind date was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's worked out well.
As a policeman's wife, were you ever worried about his safety?
You know, when Don, we got married in June, he went on July 1st. And I never knew anything but to be a policeman's wife. Well, when I met him, he had just gotten home from Korea. And Don never talked about Korea except the funny things that happened in Korea. But I know that he was there, and I knew that he had a wound of some kind because he didn't want it known because he wanted to get on the police department. But he never talked about that. And he was pretty much the same way in the police department. And I figured we were 23, and he seemed to be able to take care of himself. And I was never that kind of a policeman's wife, you know, that always butting in and trying to make things better. I thought, if he's man enough to be a police officer, he's man enough to take care of himself. So I never worried about it, but I did have a police radio. And the police radio was great, and it was just a couple of times. One night I heard, I think you were with Chet.
Yeah, Chet Gordon.
And they were in a chase. And I heard the gunshots going off. And what was the deal with that? I'll mess it up. Do you remember?
Yeah, we were driving west on 14th Avenue. I looked in the rear view mirror, and I saw a car pull out behind us. No lights. So I whipped to you, and we got, boy, and the chase was on. Cash box bounced off the hood of the police car, and got to Knox Court, and down we went down Knox Court. And Chester, boy, he was a good shot. He has out the paloom, and he shot both tires off the back of that car, and it kind of turned one sideways and went right between two trees. And but they had burglarized a place up on Colfax at that time.
But you know, when you're at home and you're in bed and it's middle of the night and you hear that, and I was so glad when I heard them go back into service. They were, you know, they were fine. Another time they were on a chase. We're with somebody. We're in this chase.
Oh, that Chester was the worst driver in the world. He's passed away now, so he can't kill me.
Talk about Chet.
But boy, that was clear out on Simmons. We followed. We were parallel in the chase, and so we turned and we come head on right to the guy they were chasing, and it was a stick up or something. And I says, "We're in the chase," and I give him the location, and Chester went to turn the corner and missed the corner, knocked down a stop sign. I said, "We're out of the chase."
I'm thinking, there's those Keystone Cops again, you know, it's just, but all the funny stories are mostly what I heard, and of course when he went on the decoy squad, and I thought, when I saw him walking down our hallway, we had a long hallway in our house, and he's trying to walk in high heels, and it cracked me up, and he said, "This isn't funny." I mean, he was really working at this. It is funny. And then he had to shave his legs. Can I tell that?
Oh, yeah.
He's in the bathtub shaving his
Looked like
legs.
somebody butchered a chicken.
You know, I think this is going to work. And that's when I told him, if anybody attacks you, honey, it's really an insult to the women of Denver. I mean, this is, you know, not good. But that, and the only thing that was wrong with the decoy squad, and I know it was probably was really a fun year for him, but I couldn't get him on the police radio. They were on a totally different frequency, and I had no idea until I'd open the Rocky Mountain News or the Denver Post, and there'd be an article. So I have a scrapbook with some of the things that happened to Don, and that was the only thing that bothered me. I never was worried about him per se, but I always knew the danger was there. But yeah, when you'd open up the paper and see what he'd done the night before or something, you didn't tell me, or I didn't tell me. It was no big deal.
How long did that decoy squad exist?
1 year. When Slavin went, Harold Dill came in and he abolished it.
Hmm.
So then, at that time, they put me back on Walking Larmer Street. And I didn't ever think, I don't know what was the matter. Everybody else got to go back to their own, but I didn't. So it took me a little while to get back to District 4
Yeah.
from that.
When we lived in Southwest Denver, there was a ditch down below, across, you know, between us and Harvey Park or whatever. And they'd get home at 3 in the morning, he and
George Torsney.
And they got home about the same time. And Don opened the garage door, and there was a rat from down in the ditch.
Big rat.
He was on the bench back in the back of the garage. Don says, "George, come over here." And you finish that story.
Oh, George comes over and he looks and he goes, boom! He blasted that rat right off my bench. Blood and everything went all over. Yeah.
Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm in bed. I'm just, wait a minute.
Boy, that rat didn't get home that night.
Being married to a
in Harvey
policeman
Park?
was very
Pardon?
fun.
Where did you live in Harvey Park?
No, we were just north of Harvey Park. 1643 South Mabry Way was our address.
Yeah.
So, it was just,
Who were some of your friends in the department, or were there folks you used to see or afterwards that you used to socialize with?
you know, we never did do a lot of socializing. Chet Gordon and I were probably the closest. We worked together as partners at District 4, and then we worked together. He went to the ID Bureau, and then we worked together in internal affairs. But he was mostly, but we were good friends. We traveled a lot. He just passed away this year.
After you retired, what did you do? What have you done?
Just rested. No.
He never rested. No, he went
We
to St.
traveled a
Anthony's.
lot.
He went over to St. Anthony's Central.
Oh, I went over to, yeah, I went over to St. Anthony's, and I was the administrative assistant or something. They gave me really a fancy name. And I was there for 10 years.
Did you work for Detroit?
Yeah, he was the, I don't know what they call him. He was really in there. Him and Art Cito. And, but they had all retired policemen, off-duty Denver policemen working in there, so it was just like going back to the police department.
What made you move to Canyon City?
When I was working Detective Bureau, burglary, I worked with a terrific detective named Ray Burns. And boy, Ray was sharp, and somehow he had a connection to know when they were getting releases from Canyon City. The burglars, he had a list, and he knew all these burglars. So we'd come down here, and he'd interview these guys, and he'd say, now, that's all I want to do is clean up cases. Just tell me what you did, and I would just want to clear my cases. And boy, they'd start talking. We'd come back with 30 or 40 clearances from these guys. Then we'd come and check the reports, and sure enough, they would tell you exactly how they got in, what they did, and everything. Because Ray says, if you get out, we're going to file them on you again if we find out if it's you. And so that's, and every time I come down here, it was just a beautiful, nice city, clean city. Mm-hmm. And it's always usually pretty warm down here. But that's the reason we moved down here.
Is there anything that you're interviewing, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I can't think of anything. Can you think of anything?
I would recommend to any young girl whose boyfriend happens to be wanting to get on the police department, go for it. It's been a wonderful career for Don, and it's been good to us. We've had a good 30 years with the police department and a wonderful 30 years retirement. He's retired as many years as he worked, which is good. And it was a good life. Yeah.
What did you retire as, Don?
Sergeant and Intelligence Bureau.
Well, on behalf of the citizens of Denver, we want to thank you both for your service.
You guys are terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this.